Malcolm Reed did not plan to drive that road. He was supposed to be downtown Atlanta that morning, seated behind a glass desk on the 42nd floor of his office building, signing contracts, approving budgets, nodding through meetings that felt important to everyone except him. His calendar was full. His assistants were waiting. His phone vibrated nonstop on the passenger seat beside him. But grief did not care about calendars. Since the day the police stood in his living room and told him his daughter, Aaliyah Reed, was dead, Malcolm had been moving through life like a man underwater. Sounds came to him muted, faces blurred together. Time stretched and collapsed in strange ways. Some days felt endless. Others disappeared completely. So instead of turning toward downtown, Malcolm turned left. He drove without destination, without music, without thought. His black sedan moved through the quieter parts of the city, past neighborhoods where paint peeled from houses and weeds cracked through sidewalks. This was not a place a billionaire CEO usually passed through. But today, Malcolm was not a CEO. He was just a father with an empty house and a heart that refused to heal. He slowed as the road narrowed near an abandoned bus stop, its metal bench rusted, its sign bent and unreadable. A large maple tree stood beside it, old and wide, its branches stretching over the cracked pavement like tired arms. And that was when he saw her. She lay on the dusty ground beneath the tree, half in shadow, half in sunlight. A homeless woman. Her clothes were once a pale blue gown, now ash-colored with dirt and stains. One slipper was missing. Her hair was rough and tangled, framing a face too thin for her age. Life had pressed hard on her for a long time, and it showed. Malcolm's foot hovered over the accelerator. He had seen many homeless people in Atlanta. He had donated millions to shelters, funded programs, spoken at charity galas where suffering was something discussed over wine and applause. Seeing pain no longer shocked him, and yet something made him slow. Sunlight broke through the leaves above, shifting as the branches moved in the breeze. The light caught on something at the woman's neck. Something gold, something bright enough to reflect directly into Malcolm's eyes. His breath stopped. The car rolled forward another few feet before Malcolm slammed the brakes. His hands tightened on the steering wheel, his pulse roaring in his ears. No, it couldn't be. He stared again. The necklace rested against the woman's collarbone, thin but unmistakable. A gold chain. At its end hung a small, elegant pendant, simple in design but unique. Malcolm Reed knew that necklace. He had stood in a jewelry store 2 years earlier, turning that exact chain between his fingers, imagining it against his daughter's skin. He had bought it for Aaliyah's 18th birthday. Not too flashy, not too plain. Something timeless, something safe, something a father believed his daughter would always carry with her. Malcolm parked the car without fully realizing he had done it. He stepped out slowly, as if sudden movement might break the fragile connection between memory and reality. The heat pressed down on him. The city hummed in the distance. Somewhere nearby, a siren wailed and faded. The woman stirred. She opened her eyes suddenly, alert in a way that came only from sleeping in unsafe places. Her gaze snapped to the black sedan, then to Malcolm standing beside it in clean clothes and polished shoes. Fear crossed her face instantly. She tried to sit up, scrambling back slightly as if expecting him to shout, to threaten, to order her away. Malcolm took one step closer. The necklace flashed again. His heart began to pound so hard it hurt. "How did you get that?" he demanded. His voice came out sharper than he intended, cutting through the air like a blade. The woman flinched. Her hand flew to her chest, fingers spreading protectively over the chain. Me, she stammered, looking around as if searching for someone else. "Sir, are you talking to me?" "Yes," Malcolm said, closing the distance between them. "I am talking to you." She swallowed hard. "That necklace," he continued, his voice low and dangerous now. "It belonged to my daughter." Her eyes widened, not with guilt, but with shock. "I didn't steal it," she said quickly, words tumbling over each other. "I swear I didn't steal anything." "I didn't say you stole it," Malcolm replied, though his tone made it sound like he almost had. "I asked how you got it." The woman hesitated. She looked down at the necklace, as if seeing it properly for the first time. Then she looked back up at him, and for a brief moment, Malcolm saw something in her eyes that unsettled him. Not fear, not deception, just exhaustion. Deep, bone-level exhaustion. "Please," she said softly. "Come down." Malcolm paused. His pride screamed at him to refuse. Men like him did not squat in the dirt beside homeless strangers. But grief was stronger than pride. He lowered himself in front of her, ignoring the dust coating his trousers, ignoring the heat seeping into his skin. "Tell me," he said quietly. "Everything." The woman took a slow breath. "My name is Naomi Brooks," she said. Her voice was weak but steady. "I sleep here sometimes," she continued, gesturing around them. "Under this tree. It's not safe, but it's better than some places." Malcolm nodded once, impatient. "The necklace," he reminded her. Naomi's fingers brushed the chain gently. "2 weeks ago," she began, "I was sleeping here at night. The road was quiet. I heard a car slow down." Malcolm's spine tightened. "It was a black SUV," she said. "I didn't move. Sometimes people do bad things to women like me at night." Her voice wavered slightly, but she went on. "The car stopped. The engine stayed on. Then, a hand came out of the window." She lifted her arm, mimicking the motion. "They threw something. It landed near my head." Malcolm's chest tightened painfully. "The necklace?" he asked. Naomi nodded. "It made a sound," she said. "Metal hitting dust." "Why didn't you run?" Malcolm asked. "Where would I run to?" she replied quietly. Malcolm had no answer. "They drove off fast," Naomi continued. "But I saw the license plate." Malcolm froze. "You saw it?" he asked sharply. "Yes," she said. "The headlights were bright. I repeated it in my head so I wouldn't forget." His mouth went dry. "Say it." Naomi hesitated, then spoke the number clearly. The world tilted. Malcolm felt all the blood drain from his face. He knew that plate. He had seen it before. Around his offices, around his company, or around people he trusted. He stood abruptly, knees almost locking. Naomi watched him, confusion turning into fear. "You're sure?" Malcolm asked, his voice trembling now, with something deeper than anger. "I'm sure," she said. "If I'm lying, may God judge me." Malcolm stared at her as if she held the last fragile thread of his reality. If that necklace had been thrown from that SUV, then someone had taken it from Aaliyah. And if someone had taken it from Aaliyah, Malcolm's thoughts fractured. Movement at the edge of his vision caught his attention. A small group of people had gathered down the road. A man with a cart, 2 women whispering, a mother with a child on her back. They were watching. Curiosity in neighborhoods like this could turn dangerous quickly. Malcolm looked back at Naomi. "Stand up," he said. She tried. Her legs shook, and she nearly collapsed. Malcolm reached out instinctively, gripping her arm to steady her. Her body went rigid at his touch. "You're coming with me," he said firmly. "To where?" she whispered. Malcolm glanced at the onlookers, then back at the necklace. "To my house," he said. "Right now." Before Naomi could respond, the low rumble of an engine sounded behind them. Another black SUV turned onto the road. Naomi's fingers tightened around Malcolm's sleeve. "Sir," she whispered, her voice trembling. "That looks like the same kind of car." The SUV slowed. Its tinted window began to slide down. Malcolm stepped slightly in front of Naomi without thinking. The window stopped halfway. A man's face appeared behind dark glasses. He glanced at Malcolm, then at Naomi, then at the necklace. A small smile curled his lips. "Good afternoon," the man said casually. "Is there a problem?" Malcolm's pulse thundered. "No problem," he replied evenly. "Just helping someone." The man's gaze lingered on Naomi. "That necklace," he said. "Fine gold." Malcolm's voice turned cold. "That doesn't concern you." The man chuckled, rolled the window back up, and drove off slowly. Only when the sound faded did Malcolm realize he had been holding his breath. Naomi looked at him, eyes wide with terror. "They're watching," she whispered. Malcolm nodded once. "That's why you're not staying here," he said. He opened the car door. "Get in." Naomi hesitated, then slowly obeyed. As Malcolm drove away, his mind raced. The necklace, the license plate, the black SUV. And a single terrifying thought took root in his chest. What if his daughter was never dead at all? The city swallowed them as they drove. unaware that a truth long buried had just begun to claw its way back to the surface. The gate to Malcolm Reed's estate closed behind them, with a deep metallic sound that echoed longer than it should have. Naomi Brooks flinched at the noise. She sat stiffly in the back seat, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her shoulders hunched as if she were expecting someone to shout at her for sitting where she did not belong. The leather beneath her felt too soft, too clean. Everything about the car felt unreal, like something taken from a world she was not meant to touch. Malcolm watched her briefly through the rearview mirror, then turned his eyes back to the road. Since leaving the maple tree, he had spoken very little. His thoughts were moving too fast, crashing into one another, refusing to settle. The image of the necklace glinting in the sunlight replayed again and again in his mind, each time sharper, heavier. That license plate, he knew it too well. It belonged to a vehicle registered under one of his subsidiary companies, assigned years ago to a trusted operations manager, a man who had attended family dinners, a man who had shaken Aaliyah's hand and smiled at her with false warmth. Malcolm's jaw tightened. The car rolled smoothly through the long driveway, past trimmed hedges and silent security guards who straightened in surprise at the sight of the woman in the back seat. Naomi lowered her head instinctively, shame burning her cheeks. Inside the mansion, everything smelled of polished wood and quiet money. Naomi stepped out slowly, her worn slippers barely touching the marble floor. She froze, overwhelmed. "I will dirty your house," she whispered. Malcolm stopped and looked at her. "My house has survived lies, betrayal, and grief," he said quietly. "A little dirt won't hurt it." He turned to the staff. "Take her upstairs," he ordered. "Give her clean clothes, food, let her rest." The housekeeper hesitated, surprise flickering across her face, but Malcolm's tone left no room for argument. Naomi was guided away, her heart pounding. As warm water later touched her skin for the first time in months, she cried silently, unsure why kindness hurt more than cruelty. Meanwhile, Malcolm stood alone in his study. The walls were lined with awards, framed photographs, newspaper articles praising his rise from nothing to one of Atlanta's most powerful black businessmen. But his eyes were fixed on none of it. He stared at a single photo on his desk. Aaliyah, smiling. "I'm not done," he murmured. That night, Malcolm made the call he had sworn never to make again. A private investigator. The man arrived before dawn. His name was Calvin Moore, a former detective from Birmingham, Alabama, known for finding things people wanted buried. Malcolm wasted no time. "I want everything," he said. "Vehicle movements, phone records, hospital admissions, anything tied to that license plate." Calvin raised an eyebrow. "That plate is close to you," he said slowly. "I know," Malcolm replied. "That's why I need you." By afternoon, the first signs of danger appeared. A black SUV was spotted parked across the street from the estate. It stayed for 20 minutes, left, returned again at dusk. Security cameras caught another vehicle circling the block twice before disappearing. Naomi noticed immediately. Every engine sound made her jump. Every shadow felt alive. "They came back," she whispered to Malcolm that evening. "I told you they would." Malcolm nodded grimly. "You're safe here," he said. "But you're right. They're not done." 2 days later, Calvin called. "I found something," he said. "A woman matching your daughter's description was admitted to a private clinic in Birmingham 3 months ago. No ID, brought in unconscious, listed under a false name." Malcolm's heart slammed against his ribs. "Alive?" he asked. "Unknown condition," Calvin replied, "but alive at admission." The room seemed to spin. If Aaliyah was alive, then everything Malcolm believed was a lie. That night, Malcolm stood at the window of his study, staring out into the dark. The city lights flickered in the distance like false stars. Somewhere between Atlanta and Birmingham, the truth was waiting. Behind him, Naomi sat quietly, holding the necklace again. "I didn't sell it," she said softly, as if she needed him to know. "It felt wrong." Malcolm turned to her. "That chain," he said, his voice heavy, "may have just saved my daughter's life." Naomi swallowed. "And if it didn't?" she asked. Malcolm's eyes hardened. "Then it will expose the people who tried to bury her." Outside, another black SUV rolled past the gate slowly, its headlights off. Inside the house, two lives once strangers were now tied together by a single piece of gold, and a truth too dangerous to ignore. And somewhere in Birmingham, a young woman lay breathing quietly, unaware that the man who loved her most was finally coming. The drive from Atlanta to Birmingham felt longer than it should have. Malcolm Reed sat in the back seat of his SUV, hands clasped tightly together, staring at the dark window as the city lights faded behind them. Naomi sat opposite him, quiet, her posture tense. Neither of them spoke. Words felt dangerous now, too fragile to carry what they were about to face. Calvin Moore drove in silence, his jaw set, eyes fixed on the road. Somewhere ahead, the truth waited. Malcolm's mind replayed the same question over and over again. What if she's alive? And just as quickly came the fear that followed it. What if she isn't? When the Birmingham clinic finally appeared, tucked behind tall iron gates and thick hedges, Malcolm felt his chest tighten. The building looked ordinary, too ordinary for something that had already shattered his world. Calvin showed his credentials. Money and influence did the rest. They were led down a quiet hallway that smelled of antiseptic and stale air. The hum of machines echoed softly from behind closed doors. Malcolm's steps slowed with every meter. Then they stopped. The nurse hesitated before opening the door. "She's weak," she said carefully, "but she's stable." Malcolm's heart pounded so loudly he barely heard the rest. The door opened. Aaliyah lay on the bed. She was thinner than he remembered. Bruises marked her arms. Her skin looked pale against the white sheets. Tubes ran from her body to machines that beeped softly, steadily. But her chest rose and fell. She was breathing. Malcolm staggered forward, his legs failing him. He gripped the side of the bed to keep from collapsing. "Aaliyah," he whispered. Her eyelids fluttered. Slowly, painfully, her eyes opened. For a moment, confusion clouded her gaze. Then recognition broke through. "Daddy?" she whispered. Malcolm fell to his knees. Tears came without warning, without restraint. He pressed his forehead against the mattress, sobbing like a man whose soul had been torn open. "I buried you," he choked. "I buried my child." Aaliyah's hand moved weakly, brushing his hair. "They lied," she whispered. "They told me you didn't want me anymore." Malcolm shook his head violently. "No," he said through tears. "Never. Never." Naomi stood frozen in the doorway, her heart racing. She watched the reunion, the grief, the love pouring out like a storm, and finally understood what that necklace had truly carried. Not gold. Hope. Over the next 2 days, Aaliyah spoke little, but what she did say came in fragments, pieces of a nightmare carefully constructed. She had been taken, drugged, hidden. She had been told her father abandoned her. She had been shown fake documents, fake signatures, fake proof. All of it had one name behind it. "Marcus Hill," she whispered. Malcolm froze. The name struck him like a punch. Marcus Hill. The name belonged to a ghost, a memory Malcolm had buried decades ago. That night, Malcolm sat alone in the clinic parking lot, his hands trembling. He dialed a number he had not called in over 25 years. No answer. The trial moved quickly. Evidence piled up. Surveillance, confessions, records that unraveled the carefully woven lie of Aaliyah's death. When Marcus Hill was brought into the courtroom in Memphis, Malcolm barely recognized him. Marcus was tall, broad-shouldered, his face hard with years of anger and disappointment. His eyes held no fear, only bitterness. When Marcus looked at Malcolm, something twisted in his expression. Recognition, hatred, truth. The courtroom buzzed as the judge called the session to order. Marcus stood slowly. "I did it," he said calmly. "I planned it." Gas filled the room. "I didn't want her dead," Marcus continued, his voice steady. "I wanted him to feel it." He pointed at Malcolm. "I wanted him to feel what my mother felt every day." Malcolm's legs weakened. The judge frowned. "Explain yourself." Marcus laughed softly without humor. "He doesn't even know her name," Marcus said. "Does he?" Malcolm's mouth opened, but no words came. "My mother," Marcus said, his voice rising now, cracking through the courtroom, "was Rose Hill. She waited for him. She raised me alone while he built an empire and forgot we existed." The room fell silent. Marcus turned back to Malcolm. "You chose one child," he said. "So I chose revenge." Malcolm felt the truth sink deep into his bones. This was his son, the one he never acknowledged, the one he abandoned with silence. I didn't plan to kill her, Marcus said quietly, but when I saw her weak, crying, I knew I'd become worse than the man I hated. The sentence was read, life imprisonment. As Marcus was led away, he stopped and looked back at Malcolm one last time. Be careful, he said softly. The men who helped me, they're still out there. Malcolm stepped forward. What about Naomi? He demanded. Marcus's eyes darkened. They think she ruined everything. The words followed Malcolm out of the courtroom like a curse. Back at the estate, security doubled. Cameras were installed. Guards rotated shifts. Naomi felt it immediately. She felt like trouble had followed her into a beautiful place. I don't want to be the reason your family is in danger, she whispered to Aaliyah one evening. Aaliyah reached for her hand. You're the reason I'm alive, she said firmly. That night, a bottle flew over the estate wall. Inside it, a note. 3 words. She knows too much. Malcolm stared at the message, his face hardening. This is no longer a family matter, he said quietly. This is war. Outside, somewhere in the darkness, an engine idled, watching, waiting, and deep within Malcolm Reed, a realization settled. The greatest enemy he had ever faced was not Marcus Hill. It was the past he had refused to confront. The message stayed on Malcolm Reed's desk long after the bottle had been removed. She knows too much. 3 words. Black ink. No signature. Malcolm stared at them as dawn light crept through the tall windows of his study. He had not slept. Every sound in the house had felt amplified. The shift of guards changing positions, the distant hum of traffic, the soft footsteps of staff moving carefully, afraid to disturb a house balanced on the edge of something unseen. This was no longer about business rivals or courtroom victories. This was about survival. Naomi Brooks had become more than a witness. She had become a symbol proof that lies could unravel, that secrets could surface, that even the smallest life could disrupt powerful men. Malcolm understood that kind of fear. He had used it himself in negotiations. He knew what men did when they believed control was slipping away. They lashed out. That morning he called everyone into the living room. Naomi sat stiffly on the couch, wrapped in a blanket despite the warmth of the house. Aaliyah sat beside her, protective, her arm around Naomi's shoulders as if daring the world to try again. Calvin Moore stood near the door, arms crossed, alert. Security guards lined the walls. Malcolm held the note up. This is not an empty threat, he said calmly. The people who helped Marcus Hill are not finished. Naomi's lips trembled. I never wanted this, she whispered. I was just sleeping. Malcolm turned to her. And that is exactly why they're afraid, he said. Because you didn't choose this. You didn't plan it. You survived it. Aaliyah squeezed Naomi's hand harder. What do we do? Aaliyah asked. Malcolm took a slow breath. We stop hiding, he said, and we stop lying. That afternoon, Malcolm went somewhere he had avoided for years. The prison. Marcus Hill looked thinner when he entered the visiting room, his anger dulled by time, his eyes tired. He seemed genuinely surprised to see Malcolm again. You came back, Marcus said flatly. Yes, Malcolm replied, sitting across from him, because running from the past almost killed my daughter. Marcus looked away. You didn't come to apologize, Marcus said. No, Malcolm answered. I came to tell the truth. Marcus laughed quietly. A little late for that. Maybe, Malcolm said, but not useless. He leaned forward. I abandoned you, Malcolm said. Not with intention, but with silence. And silence can be just as cruel. Marcus's jaw tightened. You don't get to explain your way out of this, Marcus snapped. I'm not trying to, Malcolm replied. I'm trying to end it. Marcus studied him for a long moment. The men who helped me, Marcus said slowly, they didn't do it for family or justice. They did it for money. They think Naomi is a problem now, not because of what she knows, but because of what she represents. And what does she represent? Malcolm asked. Marcus exhaled. Your conscience. The words settled heavily between them. When Malcolm stood to leave, Marcus spoke again. Be careful, he said. They don't forgive. They erase. Malcolm returned home and made the most dangerous decision of his life. He went to the police. Not selectively, not strategically, completely. He handed over everything: records, names, financial trails, old favors, quiet deals he had once convinced himself were harmless. He named men who had stood beside him at charity events, men who had smiled at his daughter. The investigation exploded. Within 48 hours, arrests began. Old cases reopened. Witnesses came forward. Men who had believed themselves untouchable suddenly found doors closing behind them. The threats stopped, not because the danger was gone, but because it had been dragged into the light. Weeks passed. Slowly, the house began to breathe again. Naomi moved differently now. She still startled at sudden noises, still checked locks twice, but something inside her had shifted. She helped in the kitchen. She learned the rhythms of the house. She began to smile hesitantly at first, then more freely. One evening, Malcolm called her into his study. She stood near the door, nervous. "Sit," he said gently. She obeyed. "I want you to work at my company," Malcolm said. Naomi stared at him. "Sir, I don't even—" "You will be trained," Malcolm continued. "Paid fairly, protected, not because you saved my daughter, but because you deserve a chance." Tears spilled down Naomi's face. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're family now," Aaliyah said later that night, hugging her tightly. "I've never had a sister," Naomi replied. Neither of them noticed the black car parked far down the street, watching silently. Time passed. Aaliyah grew stronger. She laughed again. She walked freely. Life returned to her slowly, carefully, like something fragile that could still break. Naomi thrived. She worked hard, learned quickly, and earned quiet respect. Marcus Hill sat in prison, his anger slowly dissolving into regret. 5 years passed. Letters came from Marcus, short at first, then longer, apologies, reflections, confessions of guilt. Malcolm read everyone. Then one evening, he made another choice, one that terrified him more than any threat ever had. He withdrew the case. Under strict conditions, Marcus and the remaining men were released. When Marcus walked out of prison, thinner, quieter, Malcolm stood waiting. Marcus froze. "I can't change the past," Malcolm said, "but I refuse to lose another child." Marcus's knees buckled. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I wanted you to hurt." Malcolm held him. Aaliyah stepped forward. "I forgive you," she said. Marcus broke completely. Life moved forward, not perfectly but honestly. Naomi met Jerry, a gentle man who saw her strength, not her past. Aaliyah met James, a steady presence who never tried to control her story. On their wedding day, Malcolm walked both women down the aisle. The gold necklace rested against Aaliyah's skin, no longer a symbol of loss, but of truth. Marcus coordinated quietly, guarding doors, watching shadows. Old habits died slowly. After the celebration, Malcolm stood alone, pride and fear intertwined in his chest. Peace felt fragile. Weeks later, a woman named Margaret came forward, Rose Hill's friend. The past stirred again. Another secret surfaced. Another truth demanded to be faced. But this time, Malcolm did not hide. He confronted it. Victor O'Corey was arrested. Old crimes surfaced. Old ghosts were laid to rest. Peace returned, not loud, not triumphant, but real. Years later, Malcolm sat in his living room holding two babies, Naomi's daughter, Aaliyah's son. Tears streamed down his face. "I buried a child I never lost," he whispered, "and ignored a child I never knew." The necklace lay on the table between them, once a symbol of death, now a symbol of truth, forgiveness, and a family rebuilt not by blood, but by courage. For the first time in decades, Malcolm Reed felt something steady in his chest. Peace. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from?